episode of the BreakFree Podcast, where we're shining the light on entrepreneurs and business leaders that are really changing the world for a better place with their enterprises. And today, I'm so excited we have with us a very special leader. Sam, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, David. I'm glad to be here and looking forward to sharing our thoughts and experiences.
Wonderful. Sam, for the audience, can you give me your full name? Where do you live and what do you do for a living? What's your current position?
So, full name is Sam Terese. I'm the president and CEO of Alverno Laboratories. Alverno Laboratories is an integrated laboratory network of lots of hospital laboratories, physician office testing, many special kinds of technology. We are housed in a little area called Hammond, Indiana, which for those that might want a little bit easier geography, we're about 25 minutes from downtown Chicago. So we're here in the Midwest, looking forward to spring and getting ready for the eclipse here coming up in a few days. So,
are you going to be on the path?
We are not directly on the path, but several of our hospitals, particularly down in Indianapolis, are clearly on the path. So we've been planning for traffic jams and all sorts of things that will be kind of exciting. So
they say that some cities are expecting millions of people that want to see it, right?
Yes, I mean very large, substantial crowds. So most of it is not so much concerned about people's health. Of course, that's part of it, but just the amount of traffic and how to get through it and around it should somebody really need to get to one of our hospitals. So it presents some challenges. Not that we're not always prepared for those kinds of things, but this one's rather unique.
For sure. And they said the next time is going to be in 20 years or something.
Yep. So I hope I'm still around for that one in 20 years.
Sam, talk a little bit more about your organization. You guys are a laboratory, but you also have hospitals, or how do you do your business?
Yeah, we're kind of in this unique space of a diagnostic laboratory, and we're not always the ones that most people think about in healthcare because we kind of live behind the scenes, but probably something that every single person has had some interaction with, whether they've had a blood test drawn or had a medical procedure. Usually behind the scenes is a laboratory result that's guiding the physicians in their decision making and making diagnosis and treatment of their patients. Alverno is kind of this unique organization in that while we have this large central laboratory here in Hammond, we have many laboratories throughout Illinois and Indiana, including somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 plus hospital laboratories, which are all run and staffed by Alverno. Many laboratories in urgent care facilities, laboratories in infusion centers, laboratories in physician offices. And then we have a whole nother realm of work that we do with physician offices. So there's probably about 4,000 to 5,000 physicians that use our laboratory as well. So we, on a given day, we're moving maybe 30,000 patients' samples through the system. And we look at samples as patients. That tube of blood or that specimen is really a person in our world. And so obviously we're committed to that individual in spite of the volumes and so forth. We have that great opportunity to provide an enormous level of care. And the range of services are really quite incredible, from the basic things, and trying to think of an example that maybe most people have had in their life, like something called a CBC or a glucose test or something to determine if you're a diabetic, all the way through really advanced genetic tests for people who are challenged with cancer diagnoses and trying to understand the nature of their cancer and to help guide what might be an appropriate therapy and clinical course for them. And we do that all basically every day, 365 days a year.
That's
The
beautiful.
lab never closes, never sleeps, but thousands of dedicated individuals across the system doing that each and every day. So really, we kind of define it as a great privilege that we have as an organization to do that.
You know, one of the reasons why I was so excited to do your interview is because as a software entrepreneur, most of my business life has been servicing labs. One of our clients have a DNA lab too in Canada, and we do software for all kinds of testing, right?
Yep.
And so I really respect what you do, Sam, because it's
very
not easy.
kind of
People get, their blood taken, and then a few hours later they get all these numbers in an email or in a piece of paper, and they have no idea what it takes to get those results done.
It's an incredible. I'm going to put it in the frame of it. It's an incredible dance of events. From the time the patient checks in and has that order from a physician for a laboratory test to one of our collection sites, and we have hundreds of them across, well, at least 100 plus across our market. And then once it's there, it has to make this journey from that location to where it's going to get tested. And in the meantime, we have to make sure that every one of those is correctly identified so that there's no risk of error. We talk about quality metrics, and so we have to be at a Six Sigma level. That's what's expected of us. And then you have all the service things of get the test done. That's one piece of it. Now we have this journey of how do we get the result back into our patients' hands with enough information that they can understand it. We're not all. One of the greatest challenges we face is, as you look, medical literacy is not common. I mean, the vast majority of individuals don't know what a result may mean. So we continually try to not only do that, but educate everybody in terms of, why is it important to know what your A1C is? What does it mean? And those are things that potentially you can do something about before you develop a disease or an illness.
You mentioned something beautiful. I had to go through the Six Sigma certification myself, and as a computer scientist, it helped me immensely. But most people don't know what that means. Can you explain what Six Sigma is?
So Six Sigma is a quality metric, and we talk about a mistake or an error occurring in 1 million samples. And everybody says, well, 1 in 100, that means that in our day, for example, we do 20,000 patients. And if it was 1 in 100, how many errors is that? So a bigger number. If I could do the maths quite simply, I would. But so you're always pushing segments, 100, 1 in 1,000, 1 in 100,000, 1 in a million, and on. So the greater that one is and greater that denominator is, controls the level of sigma. And sigma being probably, I forget the exact number, 1 in a million or 1 in 100 million, something like that. It's an incredible number, but that's what we strive for. That's what all our quality programs are built around. And there's a lot that goes on in the laboratory besides just testing. There's service metrics. There's, it's great that we can do a test, but it has to be done within a certain time frame for it to be of value.
And how fixing the results for different patients, right?
Well, that's really one thing we never want to happen.
Right.
And like I said, no lab, nobody is perfect. But I think the journey from a Sigma is get to as close to perfect as you can humanly possibly get. And we do a great job at that. We have lots of systems in place to detect or determine errors. We happen to, our central operation here is an ISO certified laboratory. There's not a lot of them in the country, but we've managed to maintain that level of certification. So I think the actual standard is 15189, I believe, versus ISO 9001 or 2, whatever that is for manufacturing. Right. So those are the kinds of standards that we demand in our practice. So it's really a challenge to achieve, but it tells us something about what we represent as a quality organization.
This podcast is brought to you by ISU Corp. Are you having trouble with your software projects? Is there a project that's taking too long or a technology you can't handle? We can help. We are ISU Corp, experts in custom software since 2005. With almost 20 years of experience, we can solve any technical problem from new businesses to satellite software. We've done it all. Let us turn your ideas into reality. Learn more about how we can help by visiting us at www.isucorp.ca. Your solution starts here.
I remember, Sam, one of my first projects when I went through my 6 Sigma certification was improve the chain of custody. And we were building a new LIMS system because we had so many different testing that nothing commercial would work. So we had to do something from scratch. And in fact, we still maintain those systems and make them better every year. And I remember chain of custody was the reason, like 80% of the reason of the mistakes of every lab, because we had labs all across Canada. Yep. So you would imagine like moving the samples where the lab facility was exactly what you were talking about, or also is the sample is still okay? Like, because they are date sensitive and the sample could go ruined. So what do? Like you have to go get the patient again and get another test, another blood test. It's not easy.
It's absolutely the last thing we want to do is to call a patient and say you have to come back because of X, Y, Z. Because I don't know anybody, including myself, that really likes to have needles put into their arms. I'm pretty sure that's not a great satisfier, and so we strive not to do that. But it's a challenge. We have to manage anything from transported vehicles, keeping the temperature of things right, and here in the Midwest, yes, it does snow, and so we have to worry about road conditions. I mean, there's what happens on a daily basis to make it all work is really quite incredible to watch. It's not something we really show people, and no people would ever want to see. They just know that they got a result, it's the correct result, and they have confidence in that and can believe in the lab for that. And then the other thing we as a laboratory are very involved in is we define ourselves as an innovative organization. And so it's not only just doing testing today, but what are we doing to bring the most cutting edge technologies for the benefit of our patients and our clinicians. Years ago, we were some of the first labs doing automated microbiology. Today is routine. 7, 8, 9 years ago, we were the first in the U.S. Today, our strategy is around something called digital pathology. So if you were a person that knew about looking through the microscope at a little glass slide, that's not how we do it anymore. We actually take an image of that, and we can then electronically send that image back to our physicians or pathologists to interpret. And so they don't have to wait for us to drive something to them. So one, we're speeding turnaround time. And when you think about it in pathology, it's a biopsy. Mm-hmm. And for those that have experienced that, you have a biopsy taken and then you wait. You wait and you worry. So by speeding that process along, hopefully we're taking a day of worry away from our patients and getting an answer. And coming soon in the next month, we will now apply AI which is the buzzword for everything these days.
Yeah.
But what that does is that image now can be analyzed through an AI algorithm and help guide our clinicians to say, if you're looking at this slide or this biopsy, look here, because here's where the cancer is. So by doing that, it's once again speeding the process, telling our pathologists, hey, look at these first because there's something that matters here. But more importantly, for that, very tiny, there's one cell in an array of millions that might, show that sign or predict that diagnosis. We now can get to that level and ensure that we not only don't miss any cancers, and I say miss or we can't see them. AI enables us to see them better. So that's brand new technology that's coming forward here out of Alverno in our innovation window. So basically prostate biopsies first, and after that we'll have breast biopsies coming on later this year, and then GI cancers later. So it's really, not only it's about doing testing, but it's about being innovative and bringing a higher standard of care as we define it for our patients.
And Sam, the reason why I love companies like yours, like laboratories, is that you are directly making lives better. I am a man of faith. I follow Jesus Christ, and part of my beliefs is that I have to love unconditional, and I have to make sure that whatever I do will bless other people, especially my job. That's why I do this podcast, right? And if there is somebody like you, it's like, wow, you're even going to the extent of investing in technology, higher technology, to come up with better, faster results. If somebody doesn't get detected with breast cancer, it could mean their life, right?
Yeah, when you think about things like cancer and so forth, for probably most of us, we know somebody, a family member, friend who has gone through those kinds of illnesses and challenges. And so I think the hallmark of what we've done probably in the last decade or so is to do just that. In microbiology, it was about finding a quicker way to turn around a blood culture because of sepsis, life-threatening infections that, taking 72 hours out of that process to identify what it is. We can honestly look at our staff and say, what you did, the work we did saved lives. And so being able to do that is really the reason we should exist. There are plenty of labs that can do great things, and they do. And eventually some of the technologies that we've worked with, we see kind of being adopted in other laboratories. The challenge of being first sometimes is you're kind of creating the path. Nobody really knows how to do these things, or the policies and procedures and the workflows. So we take the risk and we figure it out. But more importantly, I think what we do when we do figure that out is anybody who asks us how we did it and what we did, we freely share that. We will tell anybody about our innovation journeys, our experiences, what we did wrong, what we learned and what we did right, so that we can actually further the study in laboratory medicine in the field. So it's also part of it. It's one thing to innovate, but if you innovate and keep it to yourself, I don't know that you're serving the greater good.
Exactly. Yeah, because it doesn't matter how big you get, you will never be enough for the whole world, not even for North America.
No. We're a sizable lab, but there are plenty of labs much bigger than us.
Right.
But like I said, it's, for the people we serve, we want to make sure that we're doing everything possible for their benefit. And, we kind of actually do the same thing in our staffing world. We help build education programs and training programs and models to make sure that there are actually people to work in the labs these days. And that's a huge challenge across lots of industries. So we've developed those, and once again, same rules apply. Whatever we have done and whatever we have learned, we share. So we don't look for anything. We don't even care if you give us any credit. It doesn't matter. We have done something positive for the industry that I've been blessed to be in for 40 plus years now. So
I was going to say, Sam, how did you get into the lab business? How was that career path that took you
long
there?
story. I guess at the very basic level, I would define myself as a bit of a science geek. So I was the kid in high school that loved biology and, was conducting whatever experiments I could figure out in my backyard or whatever. Fortunately, didn't burn down the house or anything along those lines. But I've always loved science.
Like to make a particle collider?
And so that started my journey, and it's interesting because I started out in the lab space as a phlebotomist. I was the person collecting blood back in the day when we used to handwrite things, and that's a few years ago, before a lot of computers and things existed. And then, through education, became a technologist, and probably early on, I spent a bunch of days in the research environment, which maybe gave me that framework of innovation because we were just creating in that world. And then, some very brilliant, bright people offered me advice and guidance along the way. And somebody said at some point, you really like the science stuff, I understand that, but you're really good at the business stuff. So you might want to think about that pathway. And at first I said, well, no, I've got science, it's business. Who wants to do that administrative stuff? But you soon learn in leading organizations that while you may not be doing the actual work or the testing, you can create many things that will benefit the communities that you get to serve. And so I would say it's been, Alverno, it's been almost a 20-year journey here, which is a long time. I've been in the CEO seat for the last decade or so. But lots of different experiences, lots of wonderful mentors, people who have given me honest and good advice. Sometimes advice I never wanted to hear. But
I know usually the hard advice is the one that is benefiting you the most, right?
Absolutely.
But it's about disciplining yourself, and that's why you don't like it.
Yeah, there's that old saying of, if you do what you love, you never really work a day in your life. And I've had that through my entire career. So I've been a very blessed soul to do that. And I'm also blessed in that, yes, I'm talking about Alverno, but Alverno is a collection of almost 2,000 people making it happen each and every day, driving the innovation, driving care to our patients, collecting samples, doing whatever needs to be done to ensure that we are meeting the needs of our patients, physicians, and everybody else we get to interact with. And healthcare these days is not easy. I almost hate to ever say this word again, but the pandemic was pretty rough. But we got through that, and now we're starting to kind of at least hopefully start to forget it, but hopefully never completely. Mm-hmm. And so the laboratory had an opportunity to really shine. And I think as I look across the community of laboratories around the world, they truly did. Just heroic efforts were happening that I'm not sure that many people were even aware of, to somehow get the results out. Yeah, we heard, this issue and that issue, but it was a challenging time. And now, there's a lot of, challenges in healthcare, lots of activities. We're all trying to kind of find our way in this post-pandemic world, and that's the word I did not want to use. But in this current state with staffing shortages, physician shortages, and all the challenges on the economic front, we are working our way through that, not easily, but we stay very focused on our purpose of why do we exist, and if you do that and you're true to your mission and your values, it comes together. And we've done that. Not sometimes easy, but we stay focused on that. And like I said, if you stay focused there, once again, it doesn't become work anymore. It just becomes passion.
Yeah, and one of the things that I learned in my life is that once you're facing a crisis like COVID, that's a major crisis that could actually break your business and even kill your people, because a lot of people die. But once you go through that crisis, you are prepared if it happens again, because the first one took you by surprise. You had no idea what was going on. I remember I was visiting a client in Michigan, and my wife calls me, it's like, you gotta come home now because they're closing the border. I'm like, they're what? Yeah, they're closing the border. Why? Well, don't you know this pandemic is here? So that same afternoon, I took my flight back home, and I was struggling to buy food, at least to survive a week, because nobody knew what was happening. But now we're ready. If it ever happens again, I mean, there is a saying, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me.
Yeah.
If another pandemic happens to show up, if people are not prepared, it's like, okay, wake up. You had a chance to learn and to move forward and to put systems in place so that you could be ready for the next pandemic. If it ever happens, hopefully it will not, right?
It's hard to say, I know that saying very well. Unfortunately, I've probably been on the other side of it once or twice, but this one was so completely unknown. I mean, I don't know that we've ever, we went through SARS a few years ago, and we remember Spanish flu going back a long time ago, but there was another flu in the 50s as well, pretty deadly as well. There is always this risk as time passes, knowledge diminishes. People who lived through it, are no longer there, and so you're absolutely right. In our preparedness models, we go through is okay. We can kind of forecast this kind of thing, but how do we prepare for what we don't know? Who knows? Is it a virus? Is it a whatever it could be? So we do have those plans kind of in place, but with enough flexibility that they can be molded to what's occurring in the event. Yes, we learned a great deal during the pandemic, and really the technology response to that, when you think about vaccine development and all that, was really phenomenal. Could somebody have forecasted that? Who knows? But when you really look at the response, really quite incredible. Not enough to save every life, and sadly. But at the end of the day, probably did save a fair number. So yeah, I think we try our best to be prepared. But it's a hard thing to do. I mean, it's like, I remember the SARS days, so there was a great move for people to buy respirators for their healthcare facilities. And then somewhere along the line, we had an Ebola scare, and people went to look for the respirators, nobody could find them. Because we hadn't used them in a decade, and so you're right. I mean, so as distance and time occurs, it kind of alters, how people react and how prepared they are. I look at my my parents and grandparents who grew up in the U.S. during the Depression.
Mm-hmm.
Their behaviors in terms of how they bought things and things that they would was very different than probably yours and ours might be today.
Yeah.
Now, I fortunately, probably imparted a few lessons in me, so helpful. But once you live through it, you have a different perception. Once you get to the point where you haven't lived through it, then you got to figure it out. So hopefully we have plenty of smart people giving that some thought, but we're just trying to monitor the world and see what's going on so that we can be somewhat prepared.
Yeah, I think what COVID did for us is because it was worldwide. Like,
yes.
We haven't really seen a worldwide pandemic the way COVID was, even though it wasn't as strong as any other pandemics.
Yeah.
It affected every single country in the world.
Right, absolutely true.
It just created this awareness of, okay, we're in it together. How do we solve this, right?
Yeah.
This is what's special between this pandemic and the past pandemics throughout the years. And
the level of scientific engagement across the world.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to solve that. I mean, it was really quite incredible. You saw, the kind of the political boundaries and all of that kind of really disintegrate. We're all trying to learn from each other to figure out what to do and to save lives.
Yeah.
And so, if something good came out of it, it would be, I think, that. But let's all be positive. Let's hope we don't have this experience again.
Yes.
Once was enough. It was, we were here, and it was hard because we had so much demand, and we can't meet it all. We couldn't get enough reagents and enough supplies, enough equipment to really meet demands, and we were doing quite a few. So it was not a time I want to repeat.
For sure. Sam, if you had a chance to go into a time machine and go back 20 years, what would you tell yourself? What would be the best advice for you, for your 20-year younger self?
Cool. It's always an intriguing question. First of all, I don't think I would change anything that I've done. I think it's the same advice I would give anybody. Find out what you're passionate about and commit yourself to doing that. And if you do that, I think your life would be complete, whether it's both professional, personal, however it might be. So, commitment to family, commitment to career, commitment to the field you're in, I think would be the advice I would give myself and my children. Because at the end of the day, if you do that, it doesn't really matter what your job is or anything. If you really love doing it, I think your life will be more complete. Or, family, of course. But when it comes to professional, that's probably the advice I would give. That's the advice that was given to me many years ago, as I was embarking back in my second level of education in the business world. Back I was probably in my 20s, I think, at some point, and I was sitting there trying to pick out a major. And I was a lab person, a science guy, and so I'm thinking, everybody says IT, you gotta go IT because that's where the money is and all that. So I was meeting with the counselor at the time. I don't know if they still do that. And I'm trying to decide, what should be my focus here in graduate school. And the person looked at me and said, yes, you can do IT, and it's true, but tell me something, Sam. What do you love? What are you passionate about? And I answered that question, and that's where I ended up choosing my major. It wasn't even science. It was marketing and strategic planning.
Interesting, right? Because you had a scientific appetite.
So I didn't do that with the notion of, I got this master career plan, but it was what I was passionate about. And was able to apply actually in what I do today. So I think that's the message anybody. The last thing
we go back in circle to what you just said a few minutes ago. If you love what you do, you will never work a single day in your life, right?
Yeah. It's the same of everything. Your relationships, if you're passionate about your spouse and your children.
Yeah, I mean, you still have to make a living. I remember, a clear case of that is my son. He actually works for a company. He's the director of marketing. He's turning 30 next year, I think. So he's in his 30s. But he was passionate about music and he loved composing songs and doing this and that. And he tried. Because the one thing is that you have to know is that you have to make money with your passion. Otherwise, you end up having a horrible life.
Yeah, we do need to eat.
But he was exactly like you. He went to college for marketing. And that's why I was able to hire him, because I was building back then a marketing team. And now what he did is he turned his passion for music into a business. Now he has a recording studio, and this is a part-time thing after work. And believe it or not, he's so happy because he's using his marketing skills in my business, but also in his own business. And now he's evolving his passion into doing audiobooks for entrepreneurs, doing all kinds of things that involve media and music. So he's still happy, but he's providing a beautiful income for his family.
Yeah. I mean, passion can take lots of different forms. Do I do marketing plans? No, I don't. But I oversee them coming together, and I still love that. Planning, I mean, it's what I do. So, they take many forms. Sometimes people, I've got to be passionate, and you get really specific. And that's not what I really mean by passion. Passion it's a singular thing, but generally, if you're passionate about it, it expands and kind of reaches out. And you start incorporating all the different things that you're doing, and what you find is exactly the experience you described. I love music, and guess what? I get to do music, but I get to do it in the context of everything else I'm doing. So, I'm a scientist. It's my number one passion, right? Well, what do we do in the innovation world? It's kind of an experiment. It's very similar. So it's just kind of it's evolved. And the one thing I will be honest, I had no master plan. I wasn't sitting back, 30 years ago saying, gee, my goal is to be the CEO of a company.
Amazing, right?
Yeah, I'm sure there are people who have, had that in their design, but the vast majority, never really said that was their ultimate goal. They were passionate about patients, or passionate about healthcare, or passionate about hospitals, or whatever it might be. And I think it was that passion, that engagement that made them successful.
It's incredible, Sam. Yeah, very similar happened to me. Like, if you would have asked me when I graduated from college in the 90s, what was your goal? I will tell you, I wanted to become the chief software architect for a multinational. But when I went into my career path, the same thing has happened to you happened to me. I had a beautiful mentor that told me, you have more business skills than you have technical skills. I know you love this, but you gotta make a choice, because I can really use you as a leader. Yeah. And he took a risk on me. And that was the pathway for me to become an entrepreneur. Now I run 7 different companies. I have this freedom of time to do this beautiful podcast. And yes, I still love technology. I still love looking at architecture systems. But what I do is much more fulfilling than what I started doing.
Yeah, I go back to my college days coming out. I was very much into LG And so my wife would joke and say, it's like, why are we pulling off on the side of the road? And I go, well, there's a swamp over here and I want to get a sample. She would just, very blessed, she's been with me for a long time, and she would just roll her eyes probably, although we were probably dating in those days. But yeah, she went along with it. It's like, and of course, still fascinates me, but I don't really pull off and look at swamp samples anymore.
Think about it, Sam, like, talk about adding value to the world, right? What's better, a kid that is in love with pulling samples off the road, or somebody that is in charge of 2,000 people that are saving lives every day?
Yeah, right? I would like to think that, what I do today is probably bringing more value, but I don't know, studying the flora of some swamp was kind of interesting. Although with biofuels, you never know. It might have been, a missed opportunity.
Right. You're right. But it's beautiful how life unfolds, like when I look at myself in the mirror and I see all this white hair all over my face, I'm like, how fast time went by. And the knowledge that I had acquired, especially from my failures, and now that I have this podcast, I have the gift of learning from you guys directly from the masters. And I'm like, Father, thank you. I feel so blessed, because also this is being recorded and somebody is going to pick on your advice on your life career. And it's like, if I can save somebody 10 years of hardship because they don't know what to do with their life in their business context, why not?
Yeah, I mean, my greatest hope is that people do listen and listen to mentors and those that have gone before, but at the same time find their own way, make their own mistakes. I think we live in a wonderful time in that, with all the crazy challenges and everything that's going on, but particularly in healthcare, there's so much change that it's really ripe for this kind of creative thinker who can think of a new pathway or a new direction. I don't know what that is, but I think we're finally starting to see this transition from where we've been in healthcare for decades. Not all bad, but moving to something new, still yet maybe not perfectly defined, but as it evolves, I hope it evolves in a path that provides greater care for patients and service levels for physicians, and changes the way we think about healthcare. How do we keep people healthy? How do we get into this notion of value-based care? I think we are starting to understand that. And so I think it'll be, the next decade will be a really interesting time in healthcare. I might be sitting and watching on the sidelines, but, like I said, I've been at it for 40 plus years. It might be time for somebody else to take a swing.
That's
but it really, I think, will be an exciting future for healthcare. Not without challenge, but really, I think that the benefits that our patients can see and our clinicians will be great. I think technology is moving at a pace that is really quite exciting. It used to be a 10-year cycle. Now we're seeing things move in a handful of years. Still some challenges about how we fund it and pay for it and all that, but eventually that will, I think, get worked out, but it'll take some time.
That's fantastic, Sam. Sam, I really want to take care of your time. It's been 45 minutes already. I don't know where time went. The conversation was so beautiful. So I would like to respect. I know you have a lot of work to do. Can I just ask you one last question before we finish the podcast?
Sure, absolutely. I got time. I'm good.
If you had access to a billboard in front of the busiest highway on earth, what would you write on it?
Gosh. That is a really hard question, because my mind wanders to obviously advertising about Alverno or something along the lines of, but I think I'm gonna go back to my theme of passion. Find your passion and live it.
Yeah, like do what you love, right?
Find your passion and live it.
Yeah, find your passion.
Oh, by the way, if you'd like to live it with Alverno, we're always hiring.
Beautiful, yeah, for sure. Yeah. If you guys want to work for a great company, I was about to tell you that, my software company, I have the privilege that I only pick the clients I want to work for because we're so successful. And when I look at you, it's like, you are exactly the type of clients I would like to work with, Well, and so the same to you. If you're hiring people, listen, go and get an application because Sam needs more workers in the front line.
Yeah, it's interesting because we deal with obviously a handful of companies, some very large ones, and we talk about a lot of colleagues, who are your vendors, and it's like, well, we don't have vendors, we have partners, but we don't work with vendors. And it's not that we have this perfect, we have our skirmishes and battles and our regular business challenges, but at the end of the day, we want people who want to see the world and work with the world the way we choose to work with it.
Yeah.
And so they become partners.
That's the beautiful part about becoming successful, right, Sam? You get to choose who you want to work with, because most of your working time, you're going to deal with those people. So they better be nice people that align with your values, right?
Our vendor, our partners, 5, 10, 15-year arrangement. Long-term agreements. And that's how we choose to do things. The notion of we're going to look every 3 years and if somebody's a nickel cheaper doesn't really work for us. So we have long-standing relationships with folks, and by doing that, we buy the products and things we need. But all companies have different strengths that people might not see in an agreement to buy stuff, but we look deeper and say, you're doing this from a quality perspective, or you have this system, can you share it? And everybody's, for the most part, willing with appropriate, guidelines and things, but you got to look for things that bring value to your organization besides the transactional events that we have to deal with. So.
And it's like, that's why I love the free world. The hospitals will have all the access to create their own labs. But why do they choose to hire you guys? Because you are a specialist on what you do and you're taking care of the highest quality, something that probably the hospital couldn't do by themselves, right?
Well, I think we have the idealistic part. Obviously, there's a financial benefit for doing that. Our health systems do own us. So we're this integrative force that allows them to provide some lower cost laboratory services. But I don't know that that's always the most fundamental reason. Because of the structure, we can innovate in a way that most hospital labs cannot. And so some of the advanced technologies and things we can deliver because of scale or because we have the expertise and the knowledge to do. And the hospitals benefit from that. All of our hospitals have laboratories in them that we run, but there's patients in hospital beds that need certain testing closer to them. And we support all that. That's part of the Alverno system. It's not just the central operation here in Hammond, but it's each individual hospital, each individual lab, in an infusion center, a freestanding ED, a micro hospital, you name it, that lives and follows the exact same standards of here. So it's very standard, great care. So I think that's part of the reason they do that. But it's, like I said, both, the very basics, things from an economic model to the access to really advanced technology at a substantial savings. So, I mean, our hope is in our hospitals that, the technology we bring allows them to better manage their patients in the hospitals. The patients get better, they get out of the hospital quicker, all those kinds of things. So that's
Everybody benefits, right? Because those cost savings get trickled down to the patient at the same time, right? So it's beautiful, right?
Yep. It's all part of it.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
If people like to follow you, where can they find you online?
Well, you can find us online at www. I don't know that you need to use www anymore, but it's alvernolabs.com or alvernolabs.com.
If people want to work for you or want to fill up an application, they can find it there too?
They'll find it right on the website as well. There's the ability to apply to both any one of our organizations across the Midwest. We also have programs where we take in students and actually put them through education to prepare them. So they can be a biology major can't figure out what to do with their degree and they want to work in the lab. We have programs we call them our Now programs, so that they can also sign into those. We have programs for lab assistants, high school graduates where they can train and become histotechs. So
amazing.
We have a huge commitment to education, employment. We've supported the startup of medical lab sciences programs. So there's tons of opportunity at Alverno. We're very blessed in being able to offer that to our communities.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Sam, for that. You're really changing the world, even offering people a career path. Thank you.
We're trying.
Until next time, Sam, thank you so much for your time. God bless you and keep changing this world for a better place.
Thank you. Take care.
That's all for today's episode of the BreakFree Podcast. Head on over to iTunes and subscribe to the show. Starting your own business can be tough, but it doesn't have to be. Visit davidmansilla.com to pick up a copy of the #1 international best-selling book, Breaking Out of Corporate Jail. Expand what you consider to be possible and reach your full potential. And join us on the next episode.